Welcome everyone to Time Capsule News. My name is Daniel Kester, and I'll be narrating this series as we explore history from its original print. Today's article will be from the New York Mirror, Thursday, November 1st, 1962. Castro Stalls. Mikoyan flies to prod him. Caption. While the world watches and waits, Acting UN Secretary General U Thant faces Fidel Castro across Havana conference table in an effort to eliminate the U.S.-Cuba-Soviet crisis and the Red missile bases in Cuba. Missiles first, then Fidel. Washington, October 31st. UPI. The State Department stressed today that the purpose of UN Secretary General U Thant's Havana negotiations is, quote, the elimination, unquote, of Soviet offensive weapons from Cuba. Spokesman Lincoln White expressed this view in reply to speculation that the U.S. was hoping to bring about a split between Fidel Castro and the Kremlin. Another State Department official said, quote, let's get the missiles out first and talk about Castro later, unquote. Let me emphasize as strongly as I can, White said, that the purpose of Secretary General U Thant's visit to Cuba is the elimination of offensive weapons from Cuba in accordance with commitments given by Mr. Khrushchev. Article. U.S. may still use force by Louis Gulick. Washington, October 31st. Associated Press. President Kennedy's pledge not to invade Cuba, part of the proposed crisis settlement, does not rule out force should Cuba pose a major new threat to the hemisphere, U.S. officials said today. American policy toward Fidel Castro's government will remain as it was before Soviet missiles arrived on the Caribbean island, they said. Thus, Washington's efforts to isolate the Havana regime and to prevent it from sowing communism will continue. And if Cuba brandishes another major threat to the Americas, the U.S. remains committed to defensive measures, including use of force. This interpretation of Kennedy's, quote, assurances, unquote, against an invasion of Cuba given Saturday to Soviet Premier Khrushchev was supplied by high-ranking U.S. authorities. Kennedy is expected to say more about it at his news conference tomorrow. The authorities say Kennedy's pledge, made while U.S. military preparations pointed toward a possible invasion, is narrow and specific, not to invade Cuba if the offensive Russian weapons are removed. They describe this as a small price to pay for the Soviet withdrawal because they believed no U.S. invasion had been intended before the weapon shipments were discovered. They made these further points. 1. Kennedy's commitment, assuming the deal works out, is binding on the U.S. government, including future administrations. 2. It covers U.S. territory and anything that might be done from U.S. territory. 3. It does not guarantee the continuance in power of the Castro regime. 4. The U.S. remains committed to its hemisphere defense obligations, the basic Inter-American Defense Charter, the 1947 Rio Treaty, provides for individual and collective action against armed attack. Unarmed aggression may be met under treaty provisions by a wide variety of countermeasures ranging up to use of armed force. the U.S. and its hemisphere allies have taken steps against Castroite subversion in the Americas and will take more. Kennedy also told Khrushchev he is confident the other American states would also give pledges against an invasion of Cuba. U.S. officials assumed the commitment by the other Latin American governments would be similar to Washington's. Thant, Castro reached no accord. Acting UN Secretary General Thant wound up 2 days of talks with Cuban Premier Fidel Castro yesterday without agreement on ending the Caribbean crisis. As Thant ended his peace mission to Havana, Moscow ordered its top troubleshooter, Deputy Premier Anastas Mikoyan, to Cuba for what was widely interpreted as a Kremlin effort to bring a recalcitrant Castro into line. There was no indication in an official announcement by a UN spokesman that Castro had agreed to Premier Khrushchev's acceptance of UN observers to watch the removal of Russian missile bases. Castro was understood to be standing on his 5-point demands for a settlement, which included U.S. withdrawal from its Guantanamo naval base and firm guarantees against invasion of Cuba. The UN announcement said Thant would continue meetings here on the crisis with Cuban representatives. The UN announcement mentioned only one point of accord between Thant and Castro. Quote, "There was general agreement that the United Nations should participate in the settlement of the problem," unquote, it said. Thant was expected to arrive at Ottawa Airport Wednesday night. There was no plan for him to see U.S. Ambassador Stevenson or Soviet Deputy Foreign Minister Khrushchev immediately, though U.S. spokesmen here and in Washington indicated that President Kennedy was anxious for a report on the Havana talks. The UN announcement brought official confirmation of Castro's ouster of Mario Garcia Ostagai. His UN ambassador waged a fiery and emotional attacks on the U.S. in the Security Council in the initial phases of the crisis. Thanks for joining us on Time Capsule News as we continue to explore history from its original print.